Welcome to Dr. Stone episode 12, the anime about people in the Stone Age making science way past anything that they should be doing. We're on episode 12 now. I don't know if today is the mid-season finale or if it's going to be next week, but we're getting closer to that time where things are going to get probably more heated. We've been waiting for that grand bout, finally fight between Jinro, and Magma, where they're trying to get one of them married to the Princess Brewery so they can give her the antibiotics that they've been trying to cook up all this time. I don't think it's going to be this episode just from the way that things have been paced, but we never know. So last episode, in episode 11, we saw them make this glass. It was all about glass. We went to this mountain to get quartz sand, and they came back and they made a glass blower furnace by burning some obsidian, skimming off the foam that comes off the top of that, making a furnace out of it. But they weren't actually able to make any glass at all until they got this craftsman from the village, and using his superior shokunin brain, he was able to come out and make all this cool glassware that they needed to do the chemistry that they will eventually have to do to make the sulfa drug that they are trying to make in the first place. So that was last week. We also got a little bit more about how some people aren't able to see perfectly well in the old world. Suika famously has glasses now. She has lenses in her watermelon. She can see now. And also Jinro can't see as well as he would like to, but he doesn't want to admit it to anyone, so he just pretends that he can see. So he gets stuck in that boat of things, and he probably could do better and actually defeat Magma if he got glasses, but he's not willing to do that. So with this week, let's see what happens. Magma's probably gonna fight somebody, Kohaku's probably gonna train somebody, and we're also gonna get some wicked mad science. So without further ado, let's get started. Clearly something's gonna happen because the music is ramping up, but I thought I'd just step in for a second to science things up a bit. If this was like if you were actually there in real life, you wouldn't have to worry so much about having a silver spear to detect hydrogen sulfide, because that shit smells like trash. Hydrogen sulfide is a gas that is produced when organic matter decays as well. So if you've ever been around like a giant heap of trash, I don't know why you would, but that's that smell that you smell from trash is hydrogen sulfide. It's also what they put in like gas leaks. So if you've ever had like a gas stove or anything, they tell you if you smell like rotten eggs, that's that hydrogen sulfide smell. That's what they put in gas. They put it in because its smell is so distinct, and you can tell even if there's only like a couple atoms in the air, you can tell immediately just because it's so horrible. So this silver spear is more for our benefit than for like in-world their benefit, but I'll take a black spear tip over anything else. Also talking about silver, if you've ever lived in any kind of like extremely humid or tropical climate, you know that if you have any silver item, it oxidizes like crazy, which is not really a problem if you live in the northern latitudes. I used to have this silver ring, and it would get super it would just turn like black. There would be like this black coating, and it would just look really nasty when it would get oxidized, and you actually lose silver particles from that. So if you have to get it polished to make it normal again, but when you get it polished, it actually gets thinner over time. So this is chemistry at work. You can see it happening in your everyday life. I just thought it was really cool that they brought that up. And also it smells like rotten eggs, so they wouldn't really need this, but for us to see the black spear tip and be like, oh cool, we can get that visual confirmation. That's pretty cool too. Of course he is. Of course he's gonna make something to circumvent the problem. That's like the whole point of this anime, is that he just does stuff that probably we wouldn't even think of to do at all, and then he just fixes things automatically. Senku, I look forward to see what exactly you're gonna do to make a gas mask in 2 million BC, effectively, more or less. Good on you. Let's see what the gas mask looked like. I feel like you should write that down. No offense to your oratory skills. I'm sure they're perfectly fine. Your storytelling skills might be on point for all we know. But, it feels like even if Chrome dies, what is he going to do then? Are we going to start an oral tradition of like science that you probably shouldn't know? I would feel much more comfortable if you just had this all written down somewhere already. That way I could consult it. What if I just forgot for a second? What if I wasn't paying attention for a second? I guess you have to pay attention for the next 3 hours while he tells you all the stuff that he knows. Please write this down, Senku. This is way too important for this kind of stuff.
100億%生きて戻んなきゃなんねんだセンクてめえはよ
I just want to point out, or not point out really, I just want to say how much I like Chrome's voice actor. He feel like they really struck the balance right between getting him to sound like someone who's very enthusiastic and kind of like a little bit foolhardy, but also just really like kind of compassionate, but not too young at the same time. Because I feel like a lot of the time with young male protagonists in these shows, they strike the young kind of too hard, so it comes off like they're very childish. Famously, this happened with Naruto a lot. Even when in Shippuden, he sounded a little bit younger than maybe he should sound, given that he was like 16 at the time. But with Chrome, I really feel like they struck the balance, and they were able to add this kind of contrast between him and Senku, where Senku's like extremely cold and calculating, and that comes across in his voice, and Chrome is more like extremely invested in everything that he does, which is how we met him in the first place. He was super invested in his little static charge balls and everything. So I really feel like they really struck the right balance and got the perfect voice actor for Chrome in the show, because really his performance adds to it a lot. And all the voice actors in the show are pretty good, but I just felt like I needed to mention that Chrome's performance here was really good. Couple things. First of all, I mentioned an oral tradition, and they immediately cut to a scene where Kohaku's explaining the oral tradition of their village. Before we had written, scripts or any kind of like compendium of knowledge, everything was just passed down from person to person through teaching, and from like the elders to the younger people, and from the younger people to their children. So it's really nice that they have this 100 tales. It'd be nice also if Senku could get in there and like sneak his little 100 tales of useful things that they may need to know. They have already learned a couple things, like how to make glass and everything from him, like electricity, although they haven't used it for that much. He was still able to teach them that much. If they were able to incorporate more of his teachings into their 100 tales, it would probably work, since in like, I know we're not going to see what happens after he dies in this anime, but in like a real life situation like this, they will be able to preserve his knowledge past his death. Chrome, even him by himself may not be able to understand everything that Senku's teaching, just because he started so much later than whatever kids are eventually going to learn it. It would be cool if they said something like that. Like, I've always just, like I already said this before, but Senku writing down his knowledge would be really cool. That being said, I want to say something about like the idea of having an old man Senku kind of really appeals to me. Like, I don't know, there's only like 114 chapters of the anime so far, and we're not anywhere close to this. But if they had like a time skip forward, for example, where they showed like an old man Senku with a super developed scientific society, just to show us like what the end game would look like at the end, that would be amazing. Like if he had power lines and everything running but all in like this eco-punk kind of aesthetic, that would be kind of the most interesting thing to me, which is eventually how they get there is the journey of this show. I understand that, but if they just gave us a little sneak peek into the future, I would be super happy about that too. I told you guys, you could do that. I told you could turn it back silver. It's going to be ever so slightly less, substantial than it was before, but you can definitely turn it back. The only problem is it turns black again when it oxidizes again, but that's, what can you do about that? Just polish it again. Well, that sure was lucky that he was there and his spear didn't poke a hole in the hose. Okay, I don't mind that, since it's a good character arc for Jinro in this episode, overcoming fear and all that. He's the youngest of all of them, so for him to live up to the expectations that are put on him to be like fearless and all this stuff, he realizes that it's not actually about being fearless. You're not just born that way. It's kind of like an acquired trait. You have to go out and like overcome the fear just like everyone else. Which is a good character arc for him to have in this one episode. Does that mean he'll be the one who eventually defeats Magma? That would be a good payoff for this, arc that he's had. I don't think that's going to be the case, though. I'll probably still have Kinro do it, just because he seems more like the type they would eventually want to marry Ruri. But it's good that he was able to overcome his fear in the end. But, Chrome shouldn't be wearing those platform shoes walking around in this heavily, rocky, kind of steep terrain anyway. She's probably wearing some kind of foot wraps. I don't know why they didn't tie themselves up with rope. You could say all kinds of stuff, but good on you, Jinro, for saving Chrome. Otherwise, we'd lose our most enthusiastic student of Senku's. I haven't really said much about the soundtrack to this show so far, but that was really cool. Like this mixture of like kind of like an Afro beat type fast rhythm, and as well as jazz, like an Afro jazz type soundtrack. It's not something you would come up with normally, and they don't really use it that much. They use it very sparingly in the more like intense moments. Most of the time, it's just orchestral background music or kind of like soft piano melodies when someone's doing something emotional or having a flashback. But when these intense action sequences hit, they cut to like this Afro jazz. I just thought it was really interesting, like creative choice for them to do this, because there's really no reason to do that. Usually they just have like either rock or a more hard-hitting orchestral track, but for them to kind of mix it up by doing this Afro jazz type sound, I thought was interesting. It kind of fits the theme of the show. I kind of like the music in the show, actually. It's really good. That being said, good on them for actually getting sulfuric acid. I feel like there are other ways to get sulfuric acid. Like you could find minerals that naturally have sulfate ions and then just react them with like a hydrogen peroxide or something. Don't know how you'd make that. I'm not a chemistry major. Don't at me, chemistry nerds. But good on them for doing something so risky. I still feel like this would all have been a lot easier if they could just find penicillin somewhere. It feels like way easier than what they're doing now, putting their lives at risk just to get some sulfuric acid. And also, nature is kind of a freak, and I like that they presented it this way, as like nature is this kind of dangerous thing by having this visualization of this fairy lady show up and try to kill them all the time. I just thought it was a cool way of showing like there's no real way to like visualize gas coming to kill them, and they've taken some steps to try to address that by having this silver spear that turns black, as well as this fairy lady that comes and tries to kill them by turning into a skeleton and just lunging for their throat. So pretty cool way of showing us that the gas is going to kill them. The alternative would have been to just have them keel over, which I would prefer this to that, definitely. That was episode 12 of Dr. Stone. Interesting as always. I feel like the last couple of episodes we've taken a little bit of a step back. We've taken our foot off the science accelerator pedal just to kind of set up the emotional kind of payoffs that we're going to need in episode 13 when things finally go their way. So episode 13, these are just very easy predictions to make. I'm going to guess they make the drug that they've been trying to make for the last 4 or 5 episodes now. Although they've been talking about it for much longer than that, they make that drug. We finally see the grand bout. I don't know how good the action scenes are going to be, but the appeal of the show isn't really about the action. It's all about the science and the like thinking brain stuff. And we'll probably get to see Ruri get her, be cured of whatever she has, probably tuberculosis or something. I don't know if you can cure tuberculosis with antibiotics. Not a doctor either. Don't at me in that regard either. Solid episode off the bat. I personally preferred it in that little bit of a midpoint where we had just science after science after science, but I definitely see why we need this, and it hasn't really put me off in any real way. The glass was at least a scientific thing that we could, learn about and be interested in. This week, I feel like they even went even lighter on the science in order to kind of establish the relationship between Kohaku and Ruri when they do get like reunited in a sense, and also to establish the kind of Chrome-Ruri relationship and the Kinro-Ginro, what's at stake when they do fight Magma, and to set up kind of like, yes, everyone's afraid of doing the things that they're doing, but they're doing it anyway, just because the things need to be done. And that's really the most important part, is it's not about being some kind of fearless leader type person. That's what the shonen kind of manga always tells you. It's not about being fearless, it's about overcoming fear, because everyone gets scared, and they're very, eager to tell you this and to make you aware of the fact that nobody's really special in any way. It's just that you have to overcome the natural like urge to be afraid of things. And they delivered that message in a good way, as well as giving us some interesting information about sulfuric acid and hydrogen sulfide and naturally occurring sulfuric acid springs. And we got to see that cool gas mask with that eco-punk style, which was really cool. And they used activated charcoal and potassium carbonate to kind of suck the gas out of the air, which would probably work, given that activated charcoal is probably one of the most powerful adsorbing agents, that we have. Cool episode all in all. Just really, solidly well made and pushing all the different aspects that make Dr. Stone such a fun anime to watch in the first place all together. Just a solid episode, but ultimately a transitive one to set us up for next week. So looking forward to that, as I was last week, looking forward to episode 13. It feels like that's going to be the final battle between these guys in Magma. They're going to kick him out. Undoubtedly, he's going to go over to Tsukasa's side, which is, I don't think we can stop that, but he'll get a powerful enemy, and he'll probably learn that Senku's alive. So these are all things that are going to happen pretty soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But that's it for this week. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.